Hello everyone and welcome to Mr. Mo Franchise. It's time to start a brand new series on this channel, and I'm going to go into my second favorite game to play on consoles, and that is MLB The Show 20. As I look forward to March when a hopefully new MLB The Show 21 comes out on the new consoles, I'm going to be starting this channel, episode number 1, getting started with the Seattle Mariners. As you will see, just like my Madden franchise, I will be using dice rolling throughout this franchise. It may seem odd to need dice to play a video game. However, I use the dice to roll outcomes for events that will be occurring during the franchise. Since I cannot go into the code of the show itself, the dice are used to add randomness to events. I believe this randomness adds a layer of uncertainty, which makes MLB The Show more enjoyable, less stale, and less predictable. As MLB The Show moves to the next generation of consoles, I hope they begin to add these types of random events into the experience. Step 1. Team Selection. The first step is to decide which team I will be taking over. It's probably not a surprise from the first screen, but I have decided to go with the Seattle Mariners. The Mariners are one of the 6 MLB teams who have never won a World Series. In fact, they are the only team to have never even played in a World Series. They also hold the longest playoff drought in all the 4 major North American professional sports, having not qualified for the playoffs since 2001. The storyline is that I have been brought in to begin a massive rebuild. We are going to completely tear down the team and rebuild it from the ground level up. Step 2, and this is where I go away from what MLB The Show offers. I have what's called the President of Baseball Operations. The second step is to find out which President of Baseball Operations is running the Seattle Mariners. For this step, a D6 or a 6-sided die is rolled. If a 6 is rolled, I get to select which President of Baseball Operations I will be playing for. Well, I didn't roll a 6, I rolled a 2. That means I have the former scout as the President of Baseball Operations. Now notice each player of baseball operations has characteristics that will define my experience as the manager, with the patience characteristic governing how long I will have as the manager of the team before I could be fired if I don't produce results. So let's take a look at the categories. This will help determine why the team that I'm going to be starting with is so bad. So the first thing we look at is the number of MLB roster players kept. Because I have the former scout, I'm only allowed to keep 4 of the players that were actually on the Major League roster with the roster that I downloaded. I can only keep 4 of them. And I can only keep a maximum age of 23, meaning I cannot keep any player on the starting roster from when the game started that is older than 23. And I can't keep them if their rating is over 65. So I had to basically cut almost every player off of the team. Now, eventually on the next screen, I'll tell you what the EPs are, the expenditure points, but I am allowed to have 1,400 expenditure points to spend on building up the personnel of the team. And then the patience that the President of Baseball Operations has with me, he has a long leash, so I won't be fired for the first couple of seasons. It'll be highly unlikely that will happen. So, the third step is to determine the roster restructure plan. Based on his views, I was hired to lead this new-look Seattle Mariners with the following lineup. And remember, I wasn't allowed to keep most players, so I had to start basically from scratch. And to replenish the players that I had to fill in the spots of the players that I cut, I had to go to free agency and basically find any player who was 23 years or younger, who was a 65 or below. If I couldn't find players that met that criteria, I had to go to the bottom of the free agency for that position, and I had to hire or sign those people. So it's going to look pretty ugly. Now, you will see when we go over the team, some players are actually over 65, and the reason that happened is because I gave them a contract and I put them into a spot that's making them happy. So none of these players were above 65 when I purchased their contract. Some of their contracts bumped them up a couple of points, and then putting them in like important spots, calling them ace or giving them like a nice contract, that might have bumped them up to like a 68 or 69. But remember, no player when I hired them, when I signed them, could be higher than a 65. And you will once again see players that are older than 23. That's because when I went to the bottom of the free agency there weren't enough players that fit that criteria, so I just had to pick the bottom feeders of the Major League Free Agency. So let's meet the 2020 Seattle Mariners. Before we do, let's look at our ratings overall. You can see in the top corner there, we are 30th, dead last in rankings. We're 30th in contact, 30th in power, 30th in pitching, 28th in defense, and the only bright spot for this team is the team speed, where we are ranked 8th. So hopefully we'll use that to our advantage to take extra bases and to rob people of hits when we're playing defense. All right, let's take a look at your Seattle Mariners lineup. Leading off for us in playing center field is the top 50 prospect, Jared Kelenic. 65 rated overall, so clearly he's got some growth, but he's only 20 years old. I like that he bats left-handed. As you can see, his bars are pretty much straight across. Nothing stands out other than his speed and his durability, but he's got a lot of growth potential. Batting second for us, yes, you see it right. It is the 33-year-old Pablo Sandoval. He's going to DH for the start of the season. As you can see, his numbers are way down from his peak years many, many years ago for the Giants. But he's good enough to bat second for us. Batting third for us is Jose Ozuna. He is going to be our anchor, hopefully. If you look at those numbers, he mixes the contact and power that will lead this team. I know it doesn't look like much, but that's basically the best that we've got. So hopefully Jose Ozuna can handle batting third for this team and playing left field. Batting fourth and playing first base, our biggest power threat, it is former Yankee Greg Bird at a 67B overall. I am hoping that he can bring power numbers and come back to the original form that he once had. Can he recapture that form here with the Mariners? Let's hope so. Batting fifth is a very young prospect, a 67A, 18-year-old Julio Rodriguez. Look at those numbers. He's already got good power, good contact, good durability, and I'm hoping that he will have lots of growth potential for us at only 18. I hope I don't stunt his growth, as he will be a very young player in the major leagues. Batting sixth and playing catcher for us is a first baseman, but he plays secondary position as catcher, and that is John Hicks. His bars are good enough to play for the Seattle Mariners, and hoping this 30-year-old can resurrect a career and be something. Batting seventh for us is Kevin Cron. He's going to play third base for us. As you can see, basically mid-60s power is what caught my eye. I'm just looking for any sort of power burst from this Seattle Mariners team, and if you can hit in the 60s power, there's a spot for you in this first year of the Seattle Mariners. Batting eighth and playing second base is the journeyman Logan Forsythe, who plays all sorts of positions, and I am glad to see that he can. He may not play second base for us very long, but he can play a lot of spots for us and basically cover people when they are tired. And I like his discipline at the plate. And batting ninth and playing shortstop is another top 50 prospect, Cesar Turris Jr., a 65A, only 20 years old, very weak bat, no power, but as you can see, he's going to be a huge asset in the field, playing defense, fielding, his speed, his arm strength. He's definitely got a lot of growth potential at the age of 20. I'm not expecting him to hit over 220 though. I think his bat is going to be incredibly weak for the team. He is basically playing with defense. There is your potent Seattle Mariners offense. Now, let's take a look at the pitching stats. We thought the hitters were bad. It doesn't get much better with the pitching rotation. Our ace, if you can call him that, Ivan Nova, the veteran 33-year-old 68D, who carries with him an arsenal of 5 pitches, and he has good stamina for this team at 83 stamina. I'm hoping that he can go a long time and cover for somewhat questionable bullpen. After him, it goes downhill from there. Brady Rogers, the 29-year-old 67D, his stamina is a little weak, but he does have 5 pitches. He doesn't have a lot of velocity, so he's going to throw the junk up there and hopefully get batters out from contact, hitting the contact. The first of the 2 Gabriels, Gabriel Noah, he's got 4 pitches, and his stamina once again is pretty weak. I'm just hoping that he gets through 5 innings and gives up maybe 4 runs. That's our goal for Gabriel Noah. And then Gabriel Moa, both at a 66 overall B. This guy's 25 years old, and he's left-handed, and he has a heartbeat, so he has a starting spot in the rotation. He only carries 3 pitches, so if there is one pitcher that leads the rotation early, it may be Gabriel Noah. And our top 50 prospect, the third one on this team, a 61A, 22-year-old Logan Gilbert. He features 5 pitches and good velocity in that four-seam fastball. And I hope with his youth potential, he will grow in this team. I'm going to put him in the 5th spot for now. And then as we look at our bullpen, in the 6th spot is Brock Stewart. He has a decent enough stamina and 4 pitches that if anybody is struggling in the rotation, he'll be the first person that comes in and take that spot. And then for middle relief, I've got a lot of starters. I've got Tom Eshelman as a 61B. Yes, he is a starter, but it's the best that we have in the organization, and he does carry 5 pitches, so I'm hoping he can do well. Juan Then, once again a starter, 63B. I like him too. He has 4 pitches, and his stamina is good enough for bullpen. And maybe he'll throw. Andre Mendez is a lefty, 64B, 25-year-old. Of course, because he's left-handed, there's always a spot for lefties on a rotation for the Mariners. And another lefty, Manny Buenuelos. He is a 77 stamina guy with 5 pitches, so he may find the rotation at some point with more than one person is struggling rotation. Our setup righty is Joe Gerber, 60C, 22-year-old. 3 pitches. He does have good velocity in that four-seamer, so I'm hoping he uses that to his advantage. And then our setup lefty is Aaron Fletcher. He has a 4-pitch arsenal, 66C, 23-year-old. Hoping that he can be a lefty that can shut things down as the setup man. And then our closer, close your eyes, is Luis Escobar, a 58B, 23-year-old, who doesn't have a lot of clutch, but he does have a good four-seam fastball, and he may not be long for the closer role, but he's the best that we currently have. So there is your roster for the 2020 Seattle Mariners. Now we're going to look at step 4, our organizational personnel EP spending. So the 4th step is spending the EPs, what I call expenditure points, that were allotted to the organization by the PBO. Now you do not have to spend all of the EPs, which you can keep in the bank if you don't spend all of it. However, you cannot spend more EPs than you're being allotted. EPs can be earned or lost throughout the season. I started with 1,400 EPs based on annual charge, and I spent them as follows. So what this is about is, yes, in MLB The Show, they do have things like pitching coach and hitting coach and things like that, but I wish they had more depth. I wish they had personality. I wish they had a greater impact on infield and off-field play. And so in my version of MLB The Show, you have these people, but they have a greater impact than what MLB The Show currently has. So there's a GM, a pitching coach, a hitting coach, a bench coach, a bullpen coach, a first and third base coach, strength and conditioning coach, a trainer, a scouting system, farm director, a AAA manager, a AA manager, and sales and marketing. So these are all the things that will happen throughout the course of a season in my MLB Show franchise. So at the top, you see the numbers, and so basically to hire the people that will fit these jobs requires that many EPs. So with the 1,400 EPs, here's how I spent my money. I spent $150 on an A- GM. I believe a GM is going to be critical for the success of this program. I spent $100 or a B+ for a pitching coach. I do think that's going to be important to build up our young pitchers, but I'm definitely going to need even a better hitting coach. That's why I spent an A- on a hitting coach. For the bench coach, I didn't spend as much. I got a B- bench coach. They're not quite as important, but I still like them to be decent. The bullpen coach, I put a C+ on that. The worst person I spent money on was the first base coach. I kind of skimmed there, saved money from places. I got a B- to the base coach. I got an average strength and conditioning coach. I went slightly above average with the trainer with a C+. And then I put big points into my scouting and farm director, since this is a team that I'm going to build from the ground up. I've got an A scout and an A farm director. The two most important pieces for this rebuild. I put most of my money into scouting, which cost $200, and farm director, which cost $100. And that was allowed me to place in other places. I got a B- AAA manager, and then I got a C- AA manager and a C- sales and marketing team. That meant I spent 1,380 EPs, and I saved 20 for emergencies if I need to spend that for something else during the season. Just in case we lose some EPs, I wanted to have some bank just in case we have to hire someone new. Step 5, I want to talk about manager approval ratings. So one of the things I wish that MLB The Show had, and that I have implemented in my Madden franchise, is I wish that they had an approval rating for your coach in Madden and a manager in MLB The Show, in which that would fluctuate as the season went on. So you felt the pressures of getting your seat getting warmer and eventually being on the hot seat. managers and coaches have to deal with a variety of things. They have to juggle, for MLB The Show, they've got to juggle the clubhouse, like the overall team. So in this, you've got a rating. 100 is a good rating, a 0 is a poor rating. So since I'm a brand new person, I'm starting out with above 50. 50 being the average. I'm starting slightly above because there's a new sense of purpose here in Seattle. So I'm starting with a 60 rating with the clubhouse. So the players in general, collectively put together, I have that rating. And then you have the fan support. And so the fans can if you lose support of the fans, that can snowball into other things. I would argue that 5, the most important is the GM, because he's the one that will hire or fire me. He is the one that hired me, so I'm hoping to keep him in good spirits, because if that number drops too low, now he is a GM that has a longer leash, but longer doesn't mean forever. So I'll be given a couple of seasons to turn things around, but it won't last forever. And then there's another rating that I didn't include in Madden, but I did include for this, which is individual players. So from time to time, I may lose the morale of an individual player because my approval rating with the players, the individual players, is lower. They may cost the morale of the player himself. And then finally, the media. Of course, you've got to be savvy with media. They can certainly make or break managers as well. So these are the 5 ratings that our manager will have as we go through seasons with the managers. And then, once again, I wish that MLB The Show gave each manager a little bit more personality than just, here they are, because let's face it, a Joe Madden is going to manage a team different than a Tony La Russa and a Dusty Baker. And the different managers in the major leagues have different things that they tend to do that make them good managers or decent managers or even below average managers. So I've broken it up into 5 categories. And so it's not rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Instead, it's rated on a scale of 5 means you are heavily influenced in that direction, and a 1 means you're slightly influenced in that direction, and it's a slide scale that can move back and forth based on the decisions that you make throughout the course of a season. So the first one is old school versus new school. You can think about some of the old school techniques, which is, don't flip your bats, and things like that, move the base runner along, things like don't choke the opponents, things like that are old school. And then new school would be using metrics and maybe shifting more. And so for me, I consider myself a 2. I do think metrics play a big part. Like I do think you should be looking at statistics with baseball. These players are 160 games. Statistics being more in baseball, I think, than any other sports. And I think you should look at those numbers. I do think that the law of averages plays out. So I do think there should be an emphasis on that. That being said, I'm not all the way across, because I do think there's times when a manager can go with their gut feeling because they know the layout of the players. So I consider myself a 2 for new school. Long ball versus small ball. Obviously, small ball means stealing bases and bunting and sacrificing and things like that. I used to consider myself more of a small ball guy, but I think with this team, with the Seattle Mariners, we're going to need to hit home runs. We do have speed, but the team is so bad, I'm not sure that we can string together 3 hits in a row. I'm going to want to use that speed, so I put myself slightly into long ball at a 1, but I consider myself very, right almost on the fence on that. As far as authoritarian versus a player's coach, I consider myself more of a player's coach. I'm not going to consider myself someone who is going to punish players severely for things. I want to be understanding. That being said, you can certainly push my buttons too far. So I consider myself a 2 on the player's coach side. As far as short leash versus long leash, as far as how long do I let my pitchers stay in, I consider myself more of a long leash guy, but just barely. I do want to give those starting pitchers a chance to get out of situations, but I'm also not going to leave them out there forever. And then as far as media chatty versus media stoic, as far as how much interaction am I going to give with the media, I consider myself more of a 2 on media chatty. I am going to give them some colorful commentary occasionally. I'm not going to go for the top, but I do consider myself more on the side of a Joe Madden than I do on the other side, which would be like a Tony La Russa or even in the NFL, Bill Belichick sort of thing. So there are my manager tendencies, and those can, when we have random events, those can certainly play into the decisions that I make on the field, and the decisions I make on the field can impact if those go further to one side. Well, thank you so much. That is getting to know the Seattle Mariners and sort of seeing the setup of how I'm going to run this series. I hope you are excited to start this second franchise with me. I'm still going to be doing the Madden franchise, but this is the second franchise I wanted to add to sort of mix things up. I don't want to get burned out on that, so this is going to be the second part of my Mr. Mo franchise series. If you haven't already, please subscribe, smash that like button, and tell a friend. We've got a new series going on here on Mr. Mo franchise. It is MLB The Show, and it is the Seattle Mariners. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.